What's up, guys? Welcome to Broke and Stressed, a PT student podcast where we talk about our lives as broke and stressed physical therapy students. Throughout grad school, you'll come to find that the struggles that you're having happen all the time to thousands of students across the country. You are not alone. In this podcast, we'll share our personal stories and walk you through how we overcame some of our own struggles. I'm your host, Ruben. Let's have some fun, have some good conversation, and let's get into the episode. All right, guys, what is good? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Broke and Stressed. Today we have a special guest with us, Matthew Villegas. He reached out to me after CSM, which was kind of cool because I posted my vlog this last year, and he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, you should share this to more people," and I thought it was cool. So we started connecting after that. And yeah, Matthew, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. How's it going? My name is Matt Villegas. I'm a physical therapist currently working in the home health setting. And I believe we also connected through Andrew Tran with PhysioMeans Ambassadors as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, just a little bit about myself. Went to PT school at Toro University in Nevada, Las Vegas area, in Henderson. Graduated, that was 2018, and been quite the experience with working during the pandemic, and at least within my setting, being able to visit elderly folks within their homes and seeing all the different changes at different facilities along that whole course. Yeah.
For sure. Now, have you always wanted to go into the home health route, or like how did that come about?
Yeah, so for me, before PT school, I was working in a skilled nursing facility as a rehab tech. So got to see a little bit of like the office admin side, and then also doing a little bit of wellness program, being able to work one-on-one with elderly and assisted living, going through exercises that PT had set up with them for like private pay. So pretty cool experience there. And then as far as for me, eventually where I would like to get back to is pediatrics, working with kids, because basically for me, just to veer a little bit first, as far as like origin, I was born with a brachial plexus injury. And so that was how I got exposed to PT when I was in my youth, being able to work with play doctors as a child, and then being at Children's Hospital Oakland, having that experience of the rehab, and then getting observation hours there once I grew up and went into college. But yeah, as far as working in home health, for me, to be completely honest, it's the same situation as a lot of other new grad folks with working on paying down loans, and then going from there where working with geriatrics, it's kind of like working with the big kids who have stories to tell, and get to see a good variety of different, interesting clinical conditions to work with there.
Man, that's cool. You're kind of gonna have your foot in a lot of different treatment settings, which is an awesome part of PT that I think students going into school don't even realize. Like home health, they probably only think of outpatient, private practice PT or those big corporations, but they don't even know like home health exists or acute care exists, right? Or pediatrics even exists. So that's cool that you're kind of getting your feet wet and everything kind of here.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have that experience. And then, yeah, one thing I could talk about a little bit is like my clinical internship experiences with starting out, like you said, private practice, outpatient ortho. And for myself, that was actually really cool, being able to have my first experience in Las Vegas with Dr. Robert Donatelli, who is one of the shoulder experts, and he's written textbooks. And being able to Google his name once I found out who my first CI was going to be, and then being really intimidated because it seems like, wow, this is someone who's like really accomplished a lot, worked with a lot of top tier athletes like tennis player Andy Roddick, and then to actually go in there, have that experience, and then realize like as a person, like he's really cool, and then being able to learn a lot as a student and have a valuable experience of not just the clinical side and a certain school of thought for an approach to working on shoulder rehab, things like that, and being able to connect with patients from there. And then the other thing, as far as like pediatrics, I was very fortunate that my second rotation, I was able to go to Southern Utah and St. George, and in a very, rural area serving Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. And some of the patients were coming from like 2 hours away or so. So it's a very cool experience to have working in a rural setting where people are definitely invested because it's a huge time commitment, and then being able to have fun with it for peds, where like a lot of the things you try to plan something, design something, and make it fun, and then always trying to stay one step ahead of a kid who's could be highly distractible or whatnot. But yeah, in terms of like nuances and communication and things like that, trying to happens in geriatrics too, trying to like educate caregivers, other folks who are involved in the patient care beyond yourself. And then my last one was an acute care rotation in the hospital. That I could say is probably a better fit for a lot of people. Initially, I thought it would be cool because for myself, like most Filipinos, my mom is actually a nurse, and and yeah, so for me, like working in inpatient in the hospital seemed like it would be pretty cool because my mom works in subacute, and being able to really connect with patients there, and for myself, just like I said before, being able to see a wide variety of different conditions, ortho, cardio, neuro, these different wings, and how to do interdisciplinary care, like working with nurses, OTs, speech, and everyone trying to focus with a patient, trying to set up a good discharge plan. But yeah, those are like my experiences when I was a student, and definitely love having the wide variety. And then afterwards, it is a little bit of a transition from like student to new grad, and instead of taking out more loans, it's like now you got to pay everything back.
Let me segue real quick just because I forgot to do this in the beginning, but we'll transition back into this because I really like this topic. But so real quick, let's take you a flashback back to PT school, back to when you were a wee little PT student. What was an embarrassing moment that you can share with the audience listening or watching this video?
Yeah, embarrassing moments during school itself. I think looking back, it's actually pretty funny where the one test that I failed, I was going through all that stress and anxiety and whatnot. The one thing I actually failed and had to repeat was just a very simple skills check. I was so like sleep deprived, where like I was just like, like saying nonsense kind of deal, or like just not hearing correctly what was being said as well. And so in PT school, I failed a skills check for like using a stethoscope for cardiopulm, and just the different areas to be listening to and being able to communicate that verbally. For some reason, like what was going on in my head was not matching at all with like what I was saying. And so it was a really simple one. It was cool because I mean, I wasn't the only one. There were other classmates who redid that one as well, just very simple. But to think with going through all that stress and like, oh my god, I'm gonna fail this exam, or like there's 7 tests, or like how am I gonna prepare for this overwhelming schedule and all these different classes. And then yeah, just looking back, that's for me the only one little misstep in performance, and then um, yeah, out here now being at the point of like done with it, no more exam fatigue or another test.
That's funny, dude. I think that's one thing as PT students we always forget to do. We always like take care of our patients, so always think what's best for the patient. We always forget to take care of ourselves, right? We're always the worst patients for ourselves, and we don't take care of ourselves, especially during school. Like you said, you're sleep deprived. You probably weren't like getting in some exercise to take care of yourself, eating right, getting the right amount of sleep, like all basic things that we should do as human beings, but we were like just too into PT school. So I think it's one thing for PT students going in just to remember, balance, right? Just balance of taking care of yourself so you don't have those missteps along in your
Yeah,
journey.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty good, and I know it's like as students, you always hear like the different rumors or like what's the worst thing kind of deal, but like you got to feel it out for yourself and focus on the things that like actually need to be done type of deal. But yeah, definitely a good embarrassing moment. And then yeah, at least the other thing to mention with PT school, it's I know it's different for everyone, but like you're definitely a lot closer with professors and staff and faculty, which initially can be pretty crazy if you're coming from like a bigger school. Like for me, it was coming from University of California, Irvine, and like large class sizes. And then that's what's nice about going on to that higher level of education, having the smaller class sizes and being able to develop that professional relationship.
No, I definitely agree. Let's transition back to what you were talking about earlier, which is the transition from grad or new grad from student to practicing PT, which is super relevant to me because in a few short months, knock on wood, I'll be making that transition, and it's kind of scary. Not gonna lie. So, talk to me about what happened with your process? Like, what was going through your head? How did that like go? What was the timeline? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So for me, yeah, looking back, I think the biggest thing, I've talked about this with a few other folks who are on social PT and were new grads like myself, where looking back, there's a lot of things in the process where becoming a new grad staff PT, like you don't really realize or know, even when it comes to different topics that are discussed a lot, like salary negotiations, interviewing, uh, and like once you actually get in, like how important it is with like credentials for all these different electronical medical records and things like that. So for myself, I didn't go into home health initially. You definitely can, but in terms of an experience, like going into home health would be pretty overwhelming. Definitely don't discourage anyone because you could with that same goal, like I said earlier, for trying to pay down loans or things like that, it's definitely a viable setting for that goal. For like in general, for me, I worked in a skilled nursing facility in San Francisco, working with homeless population psych patients. And then for me, even though I tried to work on it a lot during school in terms of like communication and things like that, or like trying to do um, Facebook live videos or just like this podcast interviews and things like that to work on my own communication, still pretty intimidating once you go into your first series of interviews as a new grad out there, and then like I said before, when you're a student trying to feel out different things and know what's out there and trying to establish that good fit for you. But one of the great pieces of advice that one of my professors told me as I was about to become a new grad was that like you could definitely just take a job, and it's okay if it's like some feels kind of like a temporary gig type of deal. Uh, perfectly okay to do that, work on that, because there is the reality. You do have loans to pay. You're an adult, so now you can, take care of other things and not worry too much about exams. And most importantly, you get to feel out, like I've hinted out with the different clinical settings. You no matter where you're going, once you're coming out from student to new grad, you're going to gain some good experience and then try to make the most of that. In terms of like real world, uh, with the job market, definitely with last year during the pandemic, there were, um, I could definitely say for like travel PT, like where there just weren't as many positions open, and then um, sometimes you just have to see where you're at in terms of your career goals, your vision, like where do you see yourself in 1 year, 3 or 5 years type of deal. And then being able to uh, decide from there where it is that you want to go through your interviews, and then make your decisions from there. But for sure, the biggest thing that I would say that's talked about a lot is like try not to get lowballed, and then knowing your value once you're coming out as a licensed clinician.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Like, make sure when you take your first job, just like don't be afraid to negotiate your salary. My CI, previous CI, was like, yeah, just they always have more money, so ask for it. They like, yeah, like knowing your value, knowing your worth, and I think that's something that they just don't really teach you in PT school. I think we're about to learn it in one, and I have one of my classes now, so thank goodness that we have that. But I just don't hear about it a lot, you know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And then, how would you say you've grown? Being a couple years out, how have you grown from when you were graduating DPT to like now?
Yeah, that one is a very interesting question for myself because yeah, before the pandemic and everything, I was super involved and trying to go to combined sections meetings, CSM. Like you said, you had the video, trying to go to a lot of events like that, trying to do a lot of networking initially as a student. And then once you get out into the real world, becoming, pretty busy, preoccupied with uh, whatever it is that you got going on in your life, and trying to hustle a little bit more. And I definitely would say there is for sure value in the grind, in the work, and being able to have more of that exposure and those different clinical experiences and taking on more complex cases. I think that's the biggest one that is a pretty huge leap once you go from student to new grad, like baby PT, and then trying to build up from there clinically. So yeah, in terms of for myself, like with home health, I could definitely say it's an interesting experience when you do have to, catch those red flags, and then uh, call 911, and then like speaking to fire department for a patient, doing what it is that we were definitely taught during school of, patient safety and try not to kill the patient. And then going from there, trying to build yourself once you got a better, self-confidence feel of, okay, not gonna hurt this patient, and have some general idea, being able to develop that expertise and get a little better with seeing the different patterns, uh, especially like ortho cases, total hip replacements, total knee replacements, and then being able to get a little more nuance with the different goal setting and like comorbidities, and going from there to what is functional and what will help the patient and how to communicate from there.
No, yeah, I agree. And I think one thing I hear a lot from like pretty much every practicing PT out there is like fake it till you make it, right? Like how true is that phrase like when you first graduate, and like what steps did you specifically take and what resources did you use to like actually make it, you know? Because like right
Yeah,
now, sorry, like,
go
yeah,
for
keep
it.
going. Because I was gonna say right now, like, yeah, I've done my clinical experience, but like obviously in the back of my head, I'm like, man, am I ready? Am I ready to be out there on my own practicing? So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I think the first cool little shocker is when you see that your name, comma DBT on the documents. And so yeah, one quick like new grad embarrassing story I'll share that's actually pretty funny is when I did work in my first job at skilled nursing, there was another new grad PT like myself. And then I was actually at that time PTLA status, temp status for licensure. I passed the NPTE, passed the boards, and I had to take that gosh darn jurisprudence exam for California, which is very, very technical and difficult with like knowing a lot of the numbers, the laws, and things like that. Had to retake that one several times, and that was pretty funny. It's a tough test, and like after coming out of the toughest tests in your life and not wanting to do exams anymore, it's pretty funny having to go through one last one. So for me, like starting out in SNF, I actually had to be overseen technically by my new grad peer and having him like co-sign some of my documents initially because of that temporary licensure status. But yeah, just want to throw that in there really quick because in like reality and getting your patient schedule and whatnot, there's just a lot of other funny workplace things that come up. For myself, in terms of like resources, I definitely kept up. I know it's different for everyone, but I know for myself, I kept up with my APTA membership and then having access to the different journals for geriatrics, for peds. And it's good because you get to read some interesting articles and for best practice, seeing some of the things that are going on in the research world. Um, of course, for like clinical applying research to your practice working with patients, it's a little bit more nuanced from there. Outside of like, I would say outpatient ortho is probably the best setting where like you could definitely apply clinical knowledge and whatnot. Whereas I could definitely say for pediatrics, just my opinion, where I tend to see it's a lot more like uh, individual clinical case studies, not exactly as high up there in terms of like the research, how going through that rigorous process and how vetted it is. And then, yeah, just being able to go through that clinical decision making and constantly having that metacognition, that ability to review and like not be too hard on yourself type of deal. There's a lot of the real world things that still keep coming up and things that it's kind of tough when you're in that narrow one-to-one view and you could see with like maybe the patient still struggles on this thing with OT or speech and being able to be part of like care conferences and see some of the like is it you kind of deal for working with patients. But yeah, in terms of keeping up research wise, apta would be like what I know I did. And you could definitely check out a lot of other like clinical education units, things like that. For myself, I was definitely more involved with that as a student. For the one that I know is reputable, Dr. Jeff Moore with ICE Institute of Clinical Excellence for different programs. The ones that I took back when I was a student was like total body thrust manipulation and focusing on lumbar spine. And then what was cool about those experiences as far as CEUs, being able to see, like I said before, like how research is involved for making those clinical decisions once you're working with the patient.
And then we talked a little bit about like having a set goals, like where you see yourself in like 3 years, 5 years. I want to ask you, throw that question back at you. Like, where do you see yourself? How do you see yourself growing as a PT in like your 3 year, 5 year plan, if you have one like established yet?
Yeah, the one I could say for sure, and you probably know this, is that like last year definitely threw everyone for a loop. It's cool to see what other people are doing, what other folks are doing for having made that shift from like the traditional brick and mortar practice, and then people going more online, digital, doing like telehealth, or because the gyms closed down, going into like working with runners. So for myself, where it is that I'm making some of my own pivots as far as like on the side, trying to get more into like this is just for me, like working with runners, because I used to do cross country and track when I was in high school, and then a little bit of road racing during college. And yeah, for me, just being able to do like a sort of practice what you preach type of deal, and somewhere where and for me, it's a little bit more of a comfort zone, can feel a little more confident there. Just being able to share what I know, what worked for me, and then being able to, like I said before, look into the research and like what other folks are doing there as far as running, and then trying to use that to dial back into working with like youth athletes, and get back into peds from there. So yeah, for that, I know with myself, I'm working on like trying to get a little bit more pragmatic for making that happen. But yeah, um, as far as like goal wise for me, that's where I'm trying to venture back into like working with runners. Hopefully, once things clear up, at least people are getting vaccinated now. Hopefully, we can eventually get back to doing more events, and instead of just like individually running outside, get back to being able to have not just virtual runs, but in-person races. So yeah, for myself, that's where it's at.
No, that's awesome, man. I like how you're tying in like what you used to do and then bringing it back to PT. I think it's a very common thing. Like a lot of my yoga friends are bringing in yoga into their practice as PTs when they graduate, and then I want to like work with lifters because I like to weight lift. So that's kind of cool that we were bringing it, tying it all together, and it speaks to how versatile the world of PT can be. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing I could mention is like, for I hinted at it with like online. Um, Online is definitely very much so like wild wild west for rehab, for therapists, and can totally take things in a lot of different directions. Uh, yeah, there's like all sorts of different apps you could do, like coaching if you wanted to, for like wellness side or other things to try and extend and nurture that relationship with patients, with clients. So yeah.
And then I'm gonna ask, like, if you were to reflect on your life as a PT right now, how is it different than, I guess, how you imagined it when you were like going into PT school? Like, is this how you obviously COVID complicated things a bit, obviously, but is this kind of like how you pictured your PT life?
Yeah, in terms of PT life, I think the best answer is that it's like different. I think different is the best answer I could give, because initially going in, for just speaking for myself, like as my pre-PT journey was like attending medical conferences at UC Irvine to try and find some of the like vendors or PT school um, people to get to know a little bit more information, because during my time, my pre-PT journey, there really weren't that many good resources online beyond looking at different PT school websites and just here's the criteria and good luck type of deal. Uh, so in terms of expectations, to be honest, I think it's kind of unfair to be able to set expectations when you are pre-PT, and trying to feel it out and see if you could get in type of deal. For myself, having that like peds background with myself, having a brachial plexus injury and then going through that, I know that was just for me very unique, and like having this cool segue in and being able to share that story and sort of like pop out that way. But yeah, definitely in terms of um, the expectations and whatnot, there's a lot that you don't realize until you're like actually in it and be able to be behind the scenes, which is cool. And so that's why it's so different. Not just knowing about the different disciplines that are out there, occupational therapy and speech and nursing, and being able to just understand a little bit basic about what each discipline does before you come in. But even then, during school, like I could ask one of my DO friends, like, do you know what we do? And like, no one knows what everyone else does type of deal. It's kind of like a silo. So yeah, expectations, I definitely say that it's cool, it's fun. As with any type of work, career, job, of course, there's certain stressors. And then, yeah, for myself, I think it's pretty nice. The one thing I could say for sure is it's really nice having this cool, solid background of medical training and whatnot, and being able to showcase that in different ways to different patients, different clients, and especially with just letting people feel like you're listening, feel like they're being heard type of deal. That is one of the most invaluable communication skill sets in working in healthcare. And how one story I could share about that is like a patient who I didn't even end up seeing for evaluation or whatnot. Just being able to hear what's going on medically with that patient and being able to make that call of like just canceling for the physical therapy services. Um, I think that's one of the things that makes healthcare stand out very uniquely from other industries, where you can really take care of people without even like seeing them or ever working with them or exchanging any money with them whatsoever. And yeah, being able to have that influence and impact beyond like COVID and pandemic, I think that's one of the things you aren't gonna fully realize until you're actually in it. Um, that, and then again, like I was saying, with when I had my skills check that I failed with, the other tough part is you need to take care of yourself. And of course, there's going to be times where it's a little bit tougher and understandably tougher than others, but not forgetting to neglect that aspect.
Yeah, I think you touched on some good points with how like it- having expectations before PT school, that's not really realistic. Most of the time that probably expectation, like because we're not in it, like you said, there's so many different things that we're not accounting for, both good and bad, right? For the bad, it's like, oh, finding a job, the struggles of finding a job, or like dealing with management, like billing, writing notes, right? Because as observing students, we're like, oh, we don't know what, or as observe like shadowing, you don't know all that really. You don't see the behind the scenes work, but also different in a good sense because like you realize the multiple open doors that there are in this career in the medical field, and just like you said, being able to treat the different patients, and like it's it's very different than what you'd expect when you're just doing observation at just one place, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, man, I have to just ask you, because the podcast is called Broken Stressed, I have to ask all my guests what their advice is for any broken, stressed pre-PT or SPTs out there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that um, one thing that I would for sure say is to have one consistent habit or hobby as like um, your go-to when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. So it could be like I hinted at before. It could be like running, could be weightlifting, whatever it is that having your your own safe space and your own consistent activity that you enjoy, just to be able to uh, make it through each day, each week, each month, and not get bogged down too much by the different stressors or different things that can happen financially, or especially with this past year, like grief, loss of family, or things like that. And yeah, just being able to be consistent with something, totally okay if having to take a temporary like pause or break or whatnot. And um, one of the coolest things that has been much more open, um, and I'll hint at it, especially for like Asian American Pacific Islander community and like collective things that go on. Um, yeah, just being okay with not being okay sometimes, and uh, from there, just allowing things um, to happen while you're still actively trying to get better, um, and being okay with like maybe taking a little break or whatnot.
Yeah, I think we should really normalize, not being okay with not being okay. Like stuff's gonna happen and it's not always gonna go according to plan. Like I wanted to go to PT school right after grad school or right after undergrad, but I took a break. And at first that really bothered me because I'm just like, crap, it's not going according to plan. Then I came to terms with it and you realize like nothing in life really ever goes according to plan, like perfectly, like to the T, just
Yeah,
being adaptable and just going with the flow and just growing from each moment, get, taking each moment as a learning experience, and I think that's a good point with all those students out there listening, like just take a deep breath. It'll be okay. It'll work itself out, you know?
yeah. And then hopefully when you graduate and look back, it's just that one little thing that's the simplest thing that you failed.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like you're looking back at that exam right now or that skills check, and you're just laughing about it, and you're practicing PT. I remember one time I woke up late for an exam, and I was almost to tears after I was packing up all my crap. I'm like, dude, they're gonna expel me. My life as a PT is over just because I'm late for this exam. It's over. Like I was stressing for no reason. My roommate was like in the living room, like, dude, calm down. Like it's okay. It's okay. I'm laughing at it now because I'm like, wow, I was really that stressed over it. Like I mean, yeah, obviously don't be late for exams, but you know.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
But yeah, Matt, I just want to thank you for hopping on the podcast, man, giving us a lot of new grad transitional knowledge, especially for me because I've been taking notes, so
Yeah,
this is really helpful for me as I transition to graduating and being one of your peers. Which is
nice.
oh god, that's scary just to say out loud.
Yeah, yeah, it'll happen. Yeah, so cool. And then last little catchphrase I'll say, because we're both physio memes ambassadors, is make life humorous.
Yes, absolutely, guys. Just enjoy life. Like, just try to, yeah, make life humorous. Be more positive. Try to see the good in things. We are on this earth too short to like be like stressed all the time.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you for hopping on, and I will catch you guys, everyone listening and watching, on the next episode. Later, guys. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to today's episode of Broke and Stressed. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure to smash that follow or subscribe button to get notified whenever new episodes are released. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can find me on YouTube or Instagram. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.